Hello, hello. Shut the window. Okay. Let's see. Looks like I'm live. Can anybody see me, hear me? How's it going out there? Hello, hello. Not seeing anything yet. Looks like we're going. Is video and audio coming through? I can't see anything in the chat. If someone could let me know, that would help me out. Oh, hello. Coming good. All right. Well, very nice to know. You're good? Okay then. Well, I guess we can get started. Hello everyone. This is another live video drone with Disregarding Henry. It's been a little while, hasn't it? I've been gone, I don't know how long I've been gone. Couple of weeks now, if I'm not mistaken. How's everyone been? Hope everyone's been good. Just haven't... Hello, Jesse V. Hello. And everyone else. Just haven't really had much time for streaming lately. It's getting to be summer now, and so, yeah, the grocery stores are getting busy. I've been working a lot more. Been trying to, figure out how to work video stuff around the schedule. I might have to switch it. I was making it Tuesday. Might have to switch to Saturday because it looks like now I'm getting Saturdays off. That might become the new streaming day. But we'll see. It's an inconsistent schedule, so I'm kind of just going to have to do whatever I can whenever I can. But, yeah, we're here, and we can talk about some movies. Ahoy! But yeah, I've been watching a lot of movies over these last few weeks. Saw some good ones. Among them, of course, La La Land, the main one. I'll probably be talking about this episode. Which, it took me a while to get to it. But I finally did see it. I saw a bunch of other stuff, too. I wonder if I should just maybe run through some things real quick. And then we can talk about La La Land. Let's see. What have I seen? I saw one that I really liked. Looking forward to it. Been busy as well, so I know the feeling. Yeah. Got her in money. I'm saving up to move to Portland. So, yeah, trying to work as much as I can, save as much as I can. So, yeah, don't have a lot of time to focus on other stuff. But yeah, I have been finding some time to watch some movies at the end of the day. and I've been watching some ones on Netflix, and I've been finding some good stuff on there. They've been putting some good stuff up to stream recently. One they just added was one of David Gordon Green's new movies called Manglehorn, which stars Al Pacino. And I'd heard about this one a little bit. It was a smaller movie, kind of a really small, independent movie. But David Gordon Green is one of my favorite filmmakers. I love his work, and I think he's tremendously underrated. And I don't think enough people have seen or heard of his movies. He's done so many great films, like George Washington, which was not too long ago. It was put out on Blu-ray from the Criterion Collection, so that's one worth checking out. His second film, All the Real Girls, which stars Paul Schneider and Zooey Deschanel, that's a great movie. Undertow, starring Jamie Bell, that's another great movie, sort of a retelling of Charles Laughton's Night of the Hunter. Great film. He's probably best known as the director of Pineapple Express, the comedy starring Seth Rogen and James Franco. Very funny movie, but not the usual thing he does. That was kind of a larger studio project. Still fairly small, but larger for him. Most of his stuff has been really tiny indie movies with a really unusual sensibility and a lot of visual beauty to them. But Pineapple Express was, for a stoner comedy, it was pretty good. Then he did some not-so-good movies like Your Highness, which was really bad. And then he did one called The Sitter with Jonah Hill, which I never saw. It did not look very good. And now, recently, he's been returning to his indie roots and also occasionally directing a larger film. He recently did one called Prince Avalanche with Paul Rudd and Emile Hirsch that was really good. He did Joe, starring Nicolas Cage, which was really good, and I've talked about before. He did one with Sandra Bullock called Our Brand is Crisis that I actually thought was a pretty good political satire. Not a lot of people saw that one, but I was actually impressed by it. And now Manglehorn with Al Pacino. He's also got another one coming up. He's remaking Halloween. The third remake of Halloween is coming up, and he's going to be directing it. I know for years he was trying to direct a remake of Dario Argento's Suspiria, but that never ended up happening. Now it's actually happening with another director, and I guess he still had kind of like an urge to do a horror film, so now he's remaking Halloween. And I think he co-wrote the script with Danny McBride, from Eastbound and Down and many other recent comedies. That'll be interesting. I'm curious to see how that one turns out. I'm not sure what to expect from that. But I'm a huge fan of Green's work. I really love his sensibility, his humor, his ability with characters and settings and stories and non-professional actors. I think he's an incredible filmmaker. And Manglehorn, I know, didn't get very good reviews. I think it has a pretty low average on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's at like a 58%. So I actually, when I started it on Netflix, I wasn't really expecting much, but I was really surprised. I thought it was a great character piece, and I thought Pacino was great. Certainly better than he's been in a lot of recent movies like Jack and Jill. He's kind of like a lot of living legends. He's been getting a lot of really bad roles recently. Not as bad as De Niro, but he's been doing some lackluster stuff recently, and I thought Manglehorn was a great return to form for him. It was like a return to the films he was doing at the beginning of his career, like in the 70s. Just these really intimate character pieces, like something like Panic at Needle Park, which was, I think, one of his first movies where he played a drug addict. And it's just kind of like, there's not really a plot or a story. It's just kind of following these characters in their day-to-day lives. Manglehorn is a lot like that, just following this unusual character, this guy who, has a lot of past regrets and is trying to just come to terms, with the life that he's built for himself and dealing with his loneliness and his need for connection, but he can't help but, push the people who try to get close to him. He can't help but push them away. He's got all this anger and frustration. I thought it was a fascinating film, a fascinating character piece with a really terrific, unusual style. It's got sort of like this Southern Gothic fairy tale tone to it, sort of dreamlike and surreal, but I loved it. I thought it was great, and I highly recommend you check it out if you have Netflix. Give it a stream, and if you have the opportunity to see any of David Gordon Green's other films, I recommend you check those out as well. And any Harmony Korine fans as well. Director Harmony Korine actually has a supporting role in this movie. Spring Breakers Harmony Korine. He actually has an acting role in this movie. A fairly major supporting performance, too. And he's really good. He actually shares the screen with Al Pacino and does a pretty good job. So, yeah, I really like this movie. It's very unusual, very unconventional, but that's what I really liked about it. And I think it's pretty underrated, so give it a look. What else did I see? I also gotta pick one to talk about. Unrelated to movies, what are your thoughts on the Velvet Underground? As far back as I can remember, they have always been my favorite band. You seem pretty passionate about music as well as films. I love the Velvet Underground. I discovered them a few years ago. I didn't really get into music until very late in my life. I was, I think, in my early 20s before I really started getting passionate about music. I went through basically my whole teenage years just obsessed with films, and I was a late bloomer when it came to music. But then, yeah, I started discovering a lot of stuff that I really loved, like the Stooges, Iggy Pop, Lou Reed, Velvet Underground. They were definitely one of the first that really ignited my passion for music. So yeah, I love Velvet Underground. Their albums are still ones that I pretty consistently listen to. I have all of them over there on my CD shelf. But yeah, I love Velvet Underground. Their music was great. I've read all kinds of books about them, how groundbreaking they were, the subject matter they approached, their unusual way of creating sounds and tones and moods. I think they're one of the greatest bands of all time. So yeah, I love Velvet Underground. But anyways, maybe we should, yeah, what other movies have I seen? Maybe I can talk about one or two more. I don't want to ramble on for too long. And then we can just get right into La La Land. I saw a really good one, another one on Netflix. Mike Birbiglia's first movie. I talked about him briefly a week or two ago, or a couple episodes ago. I guess it's been a little bit longer than a week now. But I was going to watch his new movie, his second one, Don't Think Twice, which I've been hearing a lot of great stuff about. It just recently came on to Netflix, is now streaming, and it's one I'm definitely going to watch fairly soon. But I guess just as sort of a preparation, I thought, I kind of want to watch his first movie too, which is also streaming on Netflix, so I watched that one, which was Sleepwalk with Me. That was a very good movie. I honestly wasn't really expecting that much for it. I'd heard kind of mixed reactions to it, but I was very surprised. It's a very confident first feature. It's sort of a mix of comedy and drama and stand-up routine and autobiography. It wasn't what I was expecting, and I was very pleasantly surprised by it. It's a very entertaining, very funny movie with a very unusual story to it that is actually based on this guy's real life, Mike Birbiglia's real life, things that actually happened to him. He was, and I guess there's sort of a history to this film too. Like, it started out as a one-man show, and it became an episode of This American Life, and then it became a book, and then finally it became a movie, which Mike Birbiglia, who wrote the whole thing, he also directs and stars in the film. So it's got like an interesting lineage to it of developing from one format to another, to another, to another. But it's really good. Really good. Birbiglia is a very talented comedian. I've seen one of his shows, which I also talked about when I mentioned him last. It was one called My Girlfriend's Boyfriend, which was sort of an interesting mix of one-man show narrative and stand-up comedy. It was really good. I really liked it. And he's just as good a filmmaker as he is a performer, comedian. But yeah, he writes great dialogue, works very well with actors. I was surprised how good the film looked. Like, he's a very confident director. I was expecting I don't know. I guess maybe when comedians direct or when actors direct, there seems to be. I don't want to sound like I'm disparaging on anybody, but I don't know. There seems to be more just a focus on characters and performance that you don't really. I guess at least from my perspective, you don't really tend to see a lot of really unusual directorial choices, from performers, which is okay. But yeah, there was a lot of really interesting directorial choices in the movie, of how he narrates and kind of talks directly to camera, almost like it's a performance piece. There's a lot of like extended tracking shots that I wasn't expecting. It's very well put together. I was very pleasantly surprised by every aspect of it. It's a terrific movie, and I highly recommend checking it out if you have Netflix. And so yeah, now I'm really excited to see Don't Think Twice, which I've heard nothing but glowing reviews for. So yeah, there's a couple movies that I saw recently that I really enjoyed. I've seen a few others, but yeah, I guess we might as well just go right into La La Land and then just gonna see where it goes from there. So La La Land. I'm sure everyone knows what this movie is. Oh, I totally forgot. Should I mention anything about Sleepwalk With Me's storyline or plot? I always forget about that. I'm so bad with, summarizing plot lines and stuff. We're already moving on. I don't want to jump back. But La La Land. So yeah, this was the recent musical, written and directed by Damien Chazelle of Whiplash fame, which I also saw recently, and was a very good, though for me a very challenging movie. I talked about that one in a previous episode of Videodrone. And I wasn't quite sure what to expect from this one. I'd heard a lot of praise for it, but I don't know. There was something, I'm not sure what it was. There was something about this movie that made me kind of a little bit standoffish. I'm not sure. Maybe it was kind of like the nostalgic factor, the fact that it was like a throwback to old Hollywood movies. It's a musical. It's this bright and colorful kind of thing. I'm not sure. I didn't think it was going to be bad, but I guess I was worried that maybe when I finally watched it that it would end up being overrated or something like that. I don't know. I don't quite know what it was. But there was something in me that was a little bit resistant to actually watching this movie. But my brother saw it in theaters a couple times. He loved it, told me I had to see it. And my mom, too, she saw it with my brother, and she loved it. She says it's one of her favorite movies. And so finally she got the Blu-ray and invited me over and said, we got to watch this thing. So, of course, yeah, watched it with my mom. And had a good time. Had a really good time. Yeah, the resistance was there starting the movie when kind of starting to watch it, where I was just a little bit, I don't know. Do I really want to give myself over to this thing? But as it turns out, the movie is really, really good. Very well written, very well directed, great music, cinematography, editing. It's a virtuoso piece of filmmaking, and actually some pretty good storytelling too. And I actually, without even really realizing it, yeah, I just got drawn into it, I got invested in it, and I ended up really enjoying the thing. So how about that? Yeah, and I guess there's a lot of other stuff to talk about with this movie. There was the whole Best Picture thing, which I think everyone's kind of moved on from now. It was mistakenly announced as the Best Picture winner, and then it turned out it was Moonlight. So yeah, I don't know if there's really anything to add to that. That was kind of a funny thing from the last Oscars ceremony. But yeah, I guess I was also worried about the nostalgia factor in this one too, because a lot of stuff that really, I guess, depends a lot on nostalgia, I tend to not really enjoy. Stuff like, well, you see it a lot with 80s kind of throwbacks, and I'm getting really sick of that. And also movies like, I guess The Artist is one that I mention a few times. The Artist was a good movie, and kind of a fun little homage to silent filmmakings, to silent filmmaking. But I honestly thought The Artist was very overrated. I didn't think, when it won Best Picture, I didn't think it really deserved that. I wasn't crazy about the film. I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was this brilliant, new thing. I just thought it was an interesting little homage. And I guess maybe going into La La Land, I was expecting a little bit of the same thing. La La Land is the opposite of Dancer in the Dark. Yes, it is. Dancer in the Dark is a pretty devastating, dark movie, but it's Lars von Trier, so I guess that's to be expected. 80s throwbacks are cool if done right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything can be good if it's done right. I guess just personally, 80s throwbacks can feel a little bit, for lack of a better word, masturbatory to me. Like it's just, oh hey, remember this, remember that, reference. I get a little bit sick of that. And maybe I was expecting a little bit of that from La La Land. But as it turned out, the movie is actually very much its own thing. It's got its own story to tell. It's got its own style that it's trying to do. It's all original music for the most part. They actually do take a few shots at 80s nostalgia in the movie, which I thought was kind of funny. By the way, the director of The Artist is doing a Godard biopic. I saw that. I saw a little clip from that on Facebook not too long ago. That'll be interesting. A movie about Godard. Got a poster of Spring Breakers. Would never have guessed. I used to work in a movie theater, and I got free movie posters, and while I was working there, Spring Breakers was playing, and then they were getting rid of the posters, so I swiped it. I've got a few others too. I can't remember what else I have. I think maybe I got a Man of Steel poster, maybe something else. I can't even remember now. But I'm a huge Harmony Korine fan, so I was like, I'll throw that one up there. But yeah, lost my train of thought. That's great. Now I gotta pick it back up again. But yeah, I thought La La Land it worked well as its own movie. If you've seen a lot of classic Hollywood movies, if you've seen a lot of musicals, it adds to the experience, and you can really appreciate the tone that he's trying to capture and the romance that he's trying to pay homage to from these classic Hollywood movies, but you don't really need to. It actually works really well as its own film that does its own thing. So I was very pleasantly surprised by that, and was able to enjoy the movie both on its own terms and as a throwback to a style of filmmaking that honestly seems to be dying. Like these kinds of classical sort of movies, that are shot on sets, that are shot on film, that have big set pieces and musical numbers and big sweeping camera moves. I don't know how much longer these kinds of movies are going to stick around. I don't know how much longer Hollywood's going to stick around, to be honest. So it kind of felt like La La Land was paying tribute to that old-fashioned style of filmmaking and also original stories. Everything's a franchise now. So it kind of felt like La La Land was paying tribute to that kind of filmmaking in what really feel like its final days. And it's like a one last hurrah for that kind of classic Hollywood filmmaking. That's what it felt like to me. And I thought it was done pretty well. Obviously the direction is spectacular. The opening shot is amazing. There are many other, really incredibly intricate and fluid tracking shots that are just brilliantly realized. Great performances, obviously great visuals, just the colors and the set design and the costume design, the way it all comes together is really visually striking. And really terrific, memorable music. I was very impressed by it, and I wasn't expecting to be. So that's always nice when you can go into a movie feeling a little bit cynical and end up coming out really won over by it. And so I ended up having a really pleasant experience with it. I thought La La Land had nice and fluent character development and nice visual effects, but they were a bit generic. The opening 10 minutes was supposed to be a satire. I didn't get that feeling. Maybe. I mean, there are satiric elements to it. But I don't know. What most struck me about the movie was that I felt it was very sincere. That it wasn't trying to be ironic, which I guess you get a lot from movies now. So many things, so many, I guess, movies that try to do like a traditional genre really feel the need to turn it on its head, to have a lot of self-aware commentary and ironic detachment. You see that a lot, especially with horror movies now. You watch something like Cabin in the Woods, it's got to be constantly self-aware and constantly commenting on itself, which for me, I know a lot of people like that movie and that's fine, but for me, it got a little annoying after a while. I kind of want movies to just commit to something and do it sincerely, and I guess that's what was refreshing. Part of what was really refreshing to me about La La Land was that there's a little bit of satire, a little bit of commentary, but for the most part, it was sincere. You know, it was trying to tell a genuinely emotional story, trying to have genuinely impressive musical numbers and dance sequences and all this stuff, and it was not trying to be ironic about it, not trying to be detached. It was committed to that idea and trying to do it as sincerely as possible. And I really liked that, and I think that's what eventually won me over about it, was its sincerity and its genuineness, which I feel like I don't see enough in a lot of movies that try to do throwbacks, that try to pay homage to classic established genres. So that's what I really liked, especially about La La Land. I don't know how other people reacted to it. I've heard mixed things, mentioning it on stream. Some people seem to really like it. Other people seem to really not like it. I wasn't sure how I would react, but I ended up really liking it. So there you go. I think if you are like me and you tend to be a little bit standoffish with newer movies, especially ones that seem a little too universally acclaimed, this is one worth checking out. I think it's a genuinely good movie. Leos Carax will do a darkly funny musical with Adam Bus Driver. Did you get the Patterson reference? I did, even though I haven't seen that movie. That's good. Adam Bus Driver. I like that. But yes, I did hear about that, and I'm very excited for it. Leos Carax is one of my favorite directors. He doesn't work nearly as often as I would like him to. He's one of those ones, I love like everything he does, but he's done so painfully few movies, like Shane Carruth or Alejandro Jodorowsky, and Harmony Korine. I'm still waiting for another Harmony Korine movie, but it just seems like he'll announce one and then cancel it, and then announce one and then cancel it. I was so excited for The Trap, Harmony Korine's, what was going to be his new movie, The Trap, but that got canceled, and now he's got another one coming out. So yeah, I just wish directors, with really brilliant original visions like that could have an easier time getting movies made. But hopefully, Carax gets this new one done with Adam Driver attached and Rooney Mara. I have high hopes for it. They're definitely bankable names. And I look forward to seeing what he does with it. It's, I think supposed to be a romantic musical or something like that. I'm sure if he does it, it's going to be very strange and unconventional, like everything he does. But I'm definitely excited for that. I think it's going to come out through Amazon too, which is cool. I think I talked about this either last stream or something like that. It's really cool, the new opportunities that have opened up for filmmakers like Carax through VOD and streaming platforms. We're seeing a lot of cool stuff getting picked up by Amazon and Netflix that probably no longer has any place within the studio distribution system. So filmmaking is changing. That's why I say La La Land felt like an homage to a kind of filmmaking that is dying. I don't think you can make movies like that through that kind of system anymore. Or maybe if you can, it's in its last few dying days. It's going to turn into something else. I think, well, obviously I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here, but the streaming and VOD is really going to be where we see a lot of interesting new filmmakers and a lot of interesting established filmmakers finding maybe a new life and new opportunities. So I'm excited for that. Seems just about every week some kind of really cool, weird project is announced through Amazon or Netflix or something like that. Sorry to interrupt about La La Land, but your review of Buffalo 66 is fantastic. I love your channel. I hope you get more views and subscribers. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Speaking of, directors that don't work nearly enough, Vincent Gallo. I wish he would make another movie. I really love his work. Buffalo 66 is one of my favorite movies. I happen to be an admirer of The Brown Bunny as well, his second movie. I thought that was really good. I didn't like it as much as Buffalo 66, but I did really like it. And he's got a third movie too, which I'm going to have to do an Unmade Masterpieces on at some point. It was a movie he shot and finished and then played at one single festival and then just took it away. Said, I'm never going to release it. I'm never going to show it to anyone else. Basically just saying, screw all of you. You wouldn't appreciate it. All of you Neanderthals, you wouldn't appreciate this work of art that I've created. Which sounds like Vincent Gallo, doesn't it? He can be an interesting person, a controversial person, but as an artist, I think he's brilliant. He canceled The Trap, but I thought Focus Features would release it. Last I heard about Harmony Korine's The Trap was that a major actor dropped out of it. They never said which actor, but somebody in the main cast pulled out of it, and it was in kind of a limbo. And then Korine said he might try and shoot another movie while waiting for The Trap to come back together. But then it sounds like all of that kind of fell to pieces, and now he's got something else that he's working on. Last I heard is he's writing like a stoner surfer comedy, and I think Matthew McConaughey's been cast in the lead role. And I don't know if this is going to turn out to be a real thing. It could be like that thing he was going to do with Marlon Wayans, where he played a hitman that was going to dress up as a dollar bill. Something like that. I have a feeling this might just be one of those weird Korine things that doesn't really end up happening. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen next with Korine. The Trap sounded really good, though. I was really disappointed when that kind of fell apart. And from what I've heard, it hasn't really come back together. I don't like musicals. The only one I liked was Mary Poppins. Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page. I'm not big on musicals. I've enjoyed musicals, but I wouldn't say they're one of my favorite genres. You know, like, I've seen Mary Poppins, and that's a very enjoyable movie. Sound of Music is a good one. Fiddler on the Roof, West Side Story. Singing in the Rain is a really good one. I'll actually admit that I really like Singing in the Rain. I think that's a great movie. I think there have been some recent musicals that I was actually really surprised by, like Les Miserables with Hugh Jackman and Anne Hathaway. I was not expecting to enjoy that one as much as I did, but I thought that was a great movie. See, I think musicals are kind of a genre that whenever I hear something is a musical, my first reaction is, oh, great, not another one of those. And then I end up watching them, and I actually end up enjoying them most of the time. Promises Made in Water. Yeah, that was Vincent Gallo's third movie that apparently, last I heard, he has no plans to publicly release it. James Franco dropped out. Interesting. I hadn't heard that it was James Franco. That's interesting. It seemed like they had a really good time working on Spring Breakers. If that's actually true, I'd be surprised. I'm not too big on musicals, but I respect and enjoyed it for the most part. My grandma would have really enjoyed La La Land. I liked the ending. Yeah, the ending was really heartbreaking. It was surprisingly well done of doing it all through a visual piece like that. I don't want to spoil it for nobody who's seen it, but I thought the ending was particularly effective. It's all visual, which I love. I love when movies can tell a story and hit an emotion through purely visual means. I think movies work best when they're a visual medium. Dialogue is great, and dialogue can be an excellent tool, but I think for the most part, movies should really tell their stories and try to inspire an emotional reaction through visual means. I would see it again for the bonus features. Yeah, I'm kind of curious to listen to the audio commentary on that one. I've never really seen an interview with Damien Chazelle, but he seems like somebody who's a particularly passionate filmmaker. In both Whiplash and La La Land, you can really sense his enthusiasm, his energy, his focus. Like Whiplash, I think the thing that really struck people about that one was that it's about an obsessed, driven character, and the whole feeling of the movie, there's this tension and energy running through the whole thing that is really extraordinary, that just drives you all the way through. It's very well put together, and you sense from the filmmaker himself an intense focus and drive and obsession. And you get that from La La Land too, not so much... not in the really tense way that you got it from Whiplash, but in more of like this passionate way. Like this is a story that every scene, every line, every set piece, that it's just this thing that is coming directly from his heart, and that has this very personal resonance for him, and it's just spilling out across the screen. There's this, again, that energy and that drive and that focus and obsession. La La Land's another one that just moves with incredible energy right through the whole thing. It would be nice to see a new Coffee and Cigarettes. That it would. That'd be kind of interesting. Because the Jim Jarmusch movie, Coffee and Cigarettes, that was made up of a bunch of short films that he shot over like a 20-year period. It'd be kind of interesting if he continued that. I wonder who you could get for the new one, though. That'd be kind of fun to speculate on. Like, who could Jim Jarmusch pair up, like, for new editions of Coffee and Cigarettes? I wonder. Obviously, Adam Driver. He's got to be in there somewhere. Glad I could catch this one. Glad you could be here. Wombat HIJS. Sorry, I'm never quite sure how to say the names. Kareen said that he will do the stoner comedy with Matthew McConaughey called Beach Bum. Yeah, I heard about that. I'm not sure if it'll actually happen, though. For some reason, I read that Beach Bum starring Matthew McConaughey. I wasn't too sure if we'd actually end up seeing that one. Maybe. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. For some reason, La La Land reminded me of Mulholland Drive. I don't know why. I guess I've just been thinking about that film. Well, they're both about Hollywood. They're both about fame and success and L.A. I suppose thematically there are some connections there, only Mulholland Drive is the very dark version of that story, and La La Land is the very bright, positive version of that story. I could see the connection. Uh-oh. Sorry, I gotta plug in my computer. Draining battery. Trying to think what other movies I've seen recently. I know I've seen a bunch of stuff. Oh, I know on Hulu I just recently saw one called The Burrowers. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that one. I heard about it because I just recently, not too long ago, I finished playing through that game Outlast. I don't know if anyone's ever played that. But my brother, it was available as like a free download on his Xbox One. He has like Xbox Gold, I guess. So he gets like free games he can download every month. And Outlast he got a while back, and I kind of started playing through it. And I thought it was pretty good. Not a perfect game. There's a lot of stuff that I was kind of frustrated by it in there, but a very creepy and very tense game. There's a lot of atmosphere to it. It's very immersive. It's got an interesting story. The setting is great. Like, it takes place in an asylum. You play as an investigative journalist, and you've got like this camcorder that has like night vision. The whole game's pretty much pitch black, and you have to use the night vision to navigate. It's very disorienting and claustrophobic. But I thought it was a very tense, very effective horror game. And I was reading about it, and I found out the guy who wrote the game, this guy named J.T. Petty, he's actually a filmmaker. He writes and directs movies. He hasn't made too many movies, but I was kind of looking at the movies he's made, I found out one of them was available to stream on Hulu. So I gave it a watch. It's called The Burrowers. It's like a horror western, sort of in the vein of Tremors. It's about like these creatures that burrow underground and attack people. It takes place in the Old West. I'd seen it like on Hulu, I think. I'd seen like the poster. It's like a human skull half buried in dirt with worms crawling over it, and I kind of saw it and dismissed it. I was like, that looks like trash. But then I read about J.T. Petty and thought Outlast was very interesting, and I've been seeing like bits and pieces of Outlast 2, which just came out, which seems to have a really interesting setting and story behind it. And seems to be very intense and frightening. And so I was like, I kind of like to check this out, check out his chops as a filmmaker. And I watched The Burrowers and was very pleasantly surprised. Again, I'm saying that a lot this episode, pleasantly surprised. But I was. It's a very low-budget creature feature. Its limitations are very apparent. Special effects, aren't as polished as they might otherwise have been on a larger budgeted film. But it's very cleverly written and very well directed. It's got an unusual monster behind it, something you don't really see or haven't really ever seen in another movie. Like if you watch a low-budget creature feature with a werewolf or a vampire or something like that, you know what to expect. You know what the rules for a vampire or a werewolf are, but with a burrower, you kind of start that and you wonder, like, what's a burrower? What does that look like? What does it do? How does it operate? And so it adds a little bit more interest and entertainment value to it. And I thought for the resources that he had and the limitations that he did a pretty good job. I wouldn't rank it on the same level as Tremors, which is like as good as a low-budget creature feature can be, but it's up there. It's like a solid B. No pun intended. But yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a pretty good little horror film, and very clever too. It's also a commentary on the period, on like the racism and the persecution of Native Americans. There's a lot of really clever social commentary layered in there that I wasn't expecting. So it's a very smart film, and I thought it was pretty good. So if you have Hulu and you like low-budget horror movies, that's one to check out. The weirdest story for a horror thriller? What is the weirdest story for a horror thriller? Okay, The Killing of a Sacred Deer and Neon Demon have very weird ones. That they do. Although I don't know much about Killing of a Sacred Deer. I know that's Yorgos Lanthimos' new movie coming out soon, which I'm very excited for. He is, one of the best and most original newer filmmakers. I love his work. And Neon Demon, that's a very unusual one. Although if you think about it, it was waiting to happen. A horror film about the fashion industry. That's solid material if you really think about it. If you take like fame and obsession with and fetishization of beauty, and you spin it just a little bit, I mean, that would make for an excellent horror movie. I thought Neon Demon had its flaws and its weaknesses, but overall I thought it was a pretty interesting movie with some great moments. The ending I thought was fantastic. I think I've said that before, but the last few moments of Neon Demon I thought were great. The Burrowers is also on Amazon Prime. Saw it on there and also wrote it off. We'll definitely check it out now. Yeah, you look at the poster, you don't think much of it, but I thought it was actually pretty clever. Yeah. Have you been watching any TV? American Gods on Starz is real good so far. I was a big fan of Neil Gaiman's book. I don't know much about American Gods. I've actually never read anything by Neil Gaiman. He's one I'm going to have to check out. Although I've got shelves and shelves of books I still need to read, so who knows when I'll get around to it. But American Gods, I'll have to look into that one. Yeah, there's a lot of great TV coming out now. And unfortunately, I am very, very far behind on it. I was going to start watching Fargo, because I've had a lot of people recommend that to me, doing these streams. And I thought Fargo was available on Netflix, and I went on there and tried to find it, and it wasn't there. Yeah, Sandman. I knew about the Sandman. And Coraline, I did not know that was Neil Gaiman. You're talking about the animated movie, right? Coraline? Because that's a great movie. I didn't know that was Neil Gaiman. Um, yeah, but I only really like watching. Yes. Oh, cool. Interesting. Coraline's one I want to watch again. I saw it years ago and loved it. I need to. I just saw it was added to Netflix streaming, so I'm gonna have to check it out on there again. Been really wanting to watch it again. But yeah, I don't really like watching. I think Fargo is available to stream on Hulu, but I don't have ad-free streaming on Hulu, and I hate getting interrupted by ads on a streaming service. So if I'm watching like an episodic television series, I really only like doing it on Netflix. I can't stand the ads coming up. I tried watching through all of what did I start? I started something on Hulu, but the ads just irritated me so much that I gave up on it. I did start watching the new Mystery Science Theater on Netflix, though, which is good. I'm on the second episode now. It's a little bit jarring the way they just jump right into it with the new characters and the new cast and the new voices and everything. So it took some getting used to because I'm a huge fan of Mystery Science Theater. I've seen a bunch of the old episodes. So it took some getting used to, but it's pretty good. Which I'm glad to say. I was really worried it was going to end up being horrible. But it's pretty good. They got some good writing on there, some good riffs. I like the new cast that they've got, the new characters. So yeah, I'm getting into it. I'm glad to say that. My brother was a backer on The Return on Kickstarter too. He donated something to it, and he got sent some stuff in the mail, which was pretty cool. Unfortunately, I don't have money to be giving to Kickstarters. I wish I did. But yeah, it's cool to see Mystery Science Theater is back, and I'm glad. Yeah, it's picking up its stride again. It's still really funny and clever. What have you heard about Luca Guadagnino's Call by Your Name? It took rave reviews at, I'm guessing, at the Sundance Film Fest and Berlin Film Fest. I've not heard of that one. Call by Your Name. I know Luca Guadagnino. He directed a movie that I saw at Ebert Fest, at the Roger Ebert Film Festival, starring Tilda Swinton. It was called I Am Love, which was an interesting one. I wasn't crazy about it, but it was interesting. Tilda Swinton's always good. And I actually heard... Sorry, I need to go grab a tissue. My nose is running. I apologize. I don't want to sit here with a running nose. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. Let's see. Luca Guadagnino. Yeah, I think I Am Love was his first movie. And I just recently read that he took over directing Call Me By Your Name with Armie Hammer. The Luca Guadagnino movie, right? I was talking about Guadagnino's... I think it was his first movie. That was just one I'd happened to have seen. Which I thought was good, and I'd heard that Guadagnino took over directing on the Suspiria remake, which I said earlier David Gordon Green was going to do originally, and it sounds like Guadagnino has taken over directing duties on that one, but I haven't seen any of his other movies. So I'm guessing Call By Your Name is his newest one. I don't know much about it. I haven't really seen any trailers. I haven't really read anything about it. So, yeah, I nothing I could really add to that conversation. I'm sorry for that. Let's see. Wonder if I can think of something else that I've watched recently. I got here not too long ago, but if you talked about Damien Chazelle's next project, First Man, if not, what are your thoughts on that? I don't know anything about that. First Man? Is it about Neil Armstrong? That would be my guess from hearing the title. I'd lie if I said I wasn't slightly disappointed. He's made masterpieces that have been originals, and I was hoping for another original of his. Oh, Call Me By Your Name? It's the Italian version of Moonlight. Interesting. I'll have to look into that one. Call Me By Your Name. Write that down. Call Me By Your Name. Oh, speaking of list of movies to watch, I finally saw one. I saw The Bothersome Man. I don't know who recommended that one to me, but I did manage to track down a DVD of that one, and I watched it. It's a Norwegian film, like a Kafka-esque story about this guy who essentially just wakes up one day with no memory, and he's in like this utopian city where everything's perfect, but everyone's emotionally dead. And he starts getting like really desperate to try and escape from this city, but there doesn't appear to be any escape from it. It's like I guess you would say it's like a satire, a very, very dark comedy about a modern society and the need for something, I guess, for emotional connection and something real and human in this sterile modern civilization. That's seems to be, at least. But yeah, I thought that one was really good. I didn't know anything about it when I started it, so it was all. I didn't know it was going to be like a science fiction kind of thing. So I was very surprised by that. But yeah, that one was really good. I'm sorry I can't remember who recommended it to me, but The Bothersome Man. I watched that one and I enjoyed it. Very dark, but very funny too. And very surprising, yeah. Taking all these twists and turns that I just did not expect. Oh, yes, it's about Neil Armstrong. First Man, okay. I don't know about that title, First Man. But you never know. It might end up being good. Hearing, just the few little details... I kind of agree with you. Like, I'd like to see something different or original, but I guess you never know. You can be surprised by something. Just gonna have to wait and see. For me, it's mostly about the director. It's about like, what can this director do with this project? You know, David Gordon Green I was talking about earlier. If this were to happen, because at the time when Pineapple Express came out, I didn't really know who David Gordon Green was. But if all David Gordon Green had done were just like these small indie movies, and then suddenly it was announced David Gordon Green directing a stoner comedy with Seth Rogen and James Franco, my first reaction would be, what? Why is he doing that? That sounds awful. And then Pineapple Express ended up being really good, so... You never know. I think it's all about the storyteller and the way they choose to tell the story. So, you never know. I try to reserve judgment until I've seen the final thing. At least he's not directing, I don't know, another superhero movie or something like that. It's an American hero movie. Which, we'll see. Have you seen Pedro Costa movies? I've heard the name. I think some of his stuff has been released through the Criterion Collection. I have not seen any of his work yet, though. Yeah, he's one I've heard the name before, and I know I've made mental notes previously that I'll have to check some of his stuff out. But as of right now, I have not seen any of his films. So apologies, I won't be able to really comment on any of his work. Not the musician. Neil Armstrong? Are you talking about Louis Armstrong? American Gods isn't preachy or anything like that. It has more of an agnostic view. It's about the new and old gods at war, plays in the mythology, but there's a god for everything, like internet. Sorry for the long message, but TV, road, love, and so on. Gods of television, gods of road, gods of love, and so on, for some of the gods. Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. American Gods. Yeah, I'm always hearing praise for Neil Gaiman, that he's this genius. But yeah, I've not really seen or read any of his work yet. Oh, except for Coraline, which is good. So sounds like I'll probably enjoy his stuff. I agree, for sure excited based on his past movies. Just want to see more of his vision. Oh, excited based on his past movies just to see more of his vision. Okay, yeah, for Damien Chazelle's new movie. Yeah. Sometimes you can be surprised, so just gonna have to wait and see, I guess. I know I've seen some other stuff. I watched something on Amazon Video. I am trying to remember what it was. Oh, I did see Jim Jarmusch's new documentary on the Stooges, Gimme Danger, which was really good. But obviously, I'm a Stooges fan, so of course I'm going to enjoy a documentary about the Stooges. If you're not a fan of the Stooges, would you like it? Maybe. I thought it was a really interesting, really well put together documentary. It's all the band, telling the story in their own words, and they had a crazy, hectic history, just with drugs and failure and perseverance and all this stuff, conspiring to bring them down, and then eventually, becoming this legend, that burned out so quickly. And now, of course, yeah, Iggy Pop and all the members of the Stooges, the Ashton brothers, James Williamson, now they're like rock gods, but it was a long time coming. And it's interesting. I've read a couple books about the Stooges. So yeah, it's interesting hearing the narrative in their own words and the way Jarmusch puts it together with visual elements. So yeah, I liked it, of course. If you're a Stooges fan, it's worth checking out. Gimme Danger. And it's always interesting to see a new Jim Jarmusch movie. But I saw something else too. I am trying to remember what it was. I did see The Handmaiden just got added to Amazon Prime. So I'm gonna have to watch that soon because I'm a huge Park Chan-wook fan. And I really want to see that one. But I watched... Why can't I remember what it was? I think it was... It's not coming to me. I watched something else on Amazon Prime, though. I just can't think of what it was. Trying to think if I saw some other stuff. I watched a DVD that I got on eBay a long time ago. This cult Japanese movie called Dead End Run. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it. It's from one of my favorite independent Japanese filmmakers, Sogo Ishii. He's done stuff. I reviewed one of his movies, Electric Dragon 80,000 Volts, which is one that I really like. He also did another really good one called Burst City in 1980, arguably the film that created the aesthetic of Japanese cyberpunk, which later Shinya Tsukamoto took over the reins. He did Tetsuo the Iron Man, and then other directors like Shozen Fukui, did stuff like Pinocchio 964, which I've also reviewed on the channel. So Sogo Ishii was the first one way back in the day, and has been infrequently making movies throughout the subsequent decades. But he's a really interesting, really unusual, creative filmmaker. His movies, have just these dazzling techniques to them. He works in really low budgets and solves problems, just through these creative means. I really love his work. I really love what he does. And Dead End Run was one he did in the late 90s, early 2000s. I don't think it was ever released in the US, so I had to find a region-free DVD from somewhere. I can't remember where it was. But I've had it sitting on my shelf for the longest time and was finally I should watch this, and put it in, and it was really good. Again, I didn't know much about it. I just knew it was a Sogo Ishii movie, so I was I'll check it out. But it's it tells three separate stories, all kind of given without really much context. You sort of drop into the middle of these three separate stories of these three main characters, and they're all disconnected. They don't really weave into each other. They're just three completely separate stories of three men who are on the run from something that they've done. You don't really find out what they're running from, but you basically just jump in. These guys are fleeing from something. They're running away, and each of them finds themselves at a dead end, a literal dead end, and they end up having to confront something. And so it's basically just like these three action set pieces that end up playing out in these very unexpected, unusual ways. I'm wondering how much I should give away. It's kind of a hard movie to track down, so I guess I should talk a little bit about it. But like in the first one, it's this young guy fleeing from some unseen pursuer, and he grabs like a metal bar to try and protect himself, and somebody comes around the corner. He hits them and kills them. It turns out to just be a woman, a young woman who was walking down the street, and now he sort of ends up going crazy and having this hallucinated or possibly real conversation with the dead woman, trying to like apologize to her and talking to her after death. And then the second one is like this guy fleeing from someone. It turns out to be himself, like an inverted version of himself. He confronts, it's very psychological and kind of Jungian. He ends up having to confront his dark id or something like that. And then the last one is a guy who gets stuck on a rooftop while fleeing from the police. He takes this woman hostage, and then she ends up taking him hostage. It kind of flip-flops all around and has a lot of really surprising twists and turns in that one. The last one, the third one, was my favorite. Has a lot of really unexpected twists in it. So yeah, I liked it. Really stylishly photographed, energetically edited. Really good. If you can find it, I think it's worth watching. Dead End Run. It's only like 58 minutes long. It's really short. Sort of like most cyberpunk movies. Like Electric Dragon is only like 59 minutes. And Tetsuo the Iron Man is only like 60 minutes. So these kind of movies, they tend to be really short, but they cram a ton of stuff into that brief runtime. Have you seen Asghar Farhadi's The Salesman? By the way, I hope his new film with Penelope Cruz and Javier Bardem will be canceled. I have not seen any of... I'm so embarrassed trying to pronounce his name. Farhadi? I haven't seen any of his movies. Yeah, he did The Salesman, which I believe won Best Foreign Language Film at the last Oscars, which embarrassingly he was not able to attend. Could really go into that whole debacle, but I don't want to get too political on here. I'm just trying to talk about films, but yeah, God, that was awful. But yeah, he did win the Best Foreign Language Film Oscars, Best Foreign Language Film Oscar. I think he also won for A Separation. If not, I believe he was nominated. But yeah, I've been hearing a lot about his movies. I haven't seen any of them yet, but he's definitely one I'm going to have to check out. He's been getting a lot of praise and a lot of what would you call it? A lot of honors, a lot of awards, I guess. Well, he won an Oscar, so yeah, I'm gonna have to check out his work. And yeah, I don't know about his new one with Penelope Cruz and Javier Bardem. Oh, he did win for A Separation. Cool. So he's a 2-time Oscar winner. Definitely a distinction. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out those movies. It seems like a lot of... he's Iranian, if I'm not mistaken. It seems like a lot of Iranian filmmakers have been getting a lot of praise recently. There was that other guy... Oh, and I can't remember his name. Jafar... something. I apologize. I can't think of his name, but he did that documentary Taxi, which I've seen is streaming on Netflix. He is Iranian. Okay, good. But there's that other director that did that documentary Taxi, which I've seen is streaming on Netflix. That's another one I want to check out. I've heard a lot about him too, and if I'm correct, I believe he's another Iranian filmmaker. And he was recently like banned from making films for a while or something like that because of something he did. I remember reading something about that, but it seems like there's a lot of interesting films and filmmakers coming out of Iran recently. Oh, Jafar Panahi, but Taxi is a mockumentary. Okay, I did not know that. Yeah, but it looked interesting. I remember seeing a trailer for it somewhere and wanting to check it out, and also reading about him too because of what was going on with some film he made that caused a lot of controversy. He ended up being barred for a certain amount of time from making films. I don't remember the exact details, but I remember something happened like that, and he had to I don't know if it was Taxi, but I remember he had to sneak some film out of the country that he had recently made to get it seen. He had to actually smuggle it out of the country and then send it off to festivals and stuff. Ruzbeh, God, I am sorry again for these names. Ruzbeh Rashidi is Iranian. I guess he makes experimental films. I'm not familiar with that name. I can write it down, though. Ruzbeh Rashidi. Okay. Oh, yes, he is banned from making movies because he made Offside, which was about women trying to watch a football match. Interesting. So he is currently banned from making movies. I thought it was a temporary ban. Yeah, I wish I knew more about this. I apologize. Yeah, but I remember that was where I first heard of him. And I have yet to watch one of his films, but he's one I want to check out. So yeah, Farhadi and Panahi, if I'm saying those right, which I'm probably not because I'm a dumb American. Yeah, I'll have to look into those. Have you seen Jonas Mikas? That I've heard the name. Oh no, wait. Now I'm getting confused because I know there's an experimental filmmaker, and then there's also like the music video director, and I think they have really similar names. There was the guy that directed Lady Gaga's Telephone music video, and then yeah, there's the guy, he was like part of the Andy Warhol scene, right? In the 60s, he did all these experimental films. I'm not sure which one you're referring to, so I'm very sorry for that. I always get confused about this. But if it's the experimental filmmaker, I have not seen any of his work, but I've read a lot about him. And if it's the other guy, I saw that movie he did called Spun, which was about drug addicts, and was interesting. Very stylishly photographed. I remember liking that. What about Abbas? Another name. Abbas Kiarostami, who just recently passed away, unfortunately. I remember reading about that. Yeah, he's Iranian too, isn't he? I have seen a Kiarostami movie. I haven't seen Taste of Cherry. That's the one I've heard a lot about. He's done some other stuff, but I've seen at least one of his movies. I saw Certified Copy with Juliette Binoche, which was really good. That was another one that really took me by surprise. I try not to read too much about movies before I go into them. I just kind of, I'll see certain movies be mentioned a lot and think, I'll have to check that one out. But I try not to really watch too many trailers or read any reviews. So I just kind of go into a film and am surprised by it. And yeah, Certified Copy was a big surprise because it starts out, if I want to get into spoilers, I don't know who's seen it and who hasn't, but it starts out as one kind of story and gradually evolves into another kind of story. I remember being very confused the first time I watched it because the way, Juliette Binoche and the other actor, the male character, the way their relation, it's basically just like a 90 minute, 2 hour conversation between this couple. And their relationship starts out as one thing, and over the course of real time, some kind of disconnect happens, and you see their relationship evolve by like decades over the course of this one conversation with apparently no external change taking place. So I'm spoiling it here now for anyone who's never seen it, so I'm sorry, but yeah, they start out as like just two people meeting, if I remember correctly, and they start having a conversation where they get to know each other, a la Richard Linklater's Before trilogy, but it's like the whole trilogy crammed into one movie. And so then in the middle, they're kind of like they're a couple that's been together for a while and they're sort of fighting, and then by the end they're married and they have a child, and it's just over the course of a single conversation. Like, it's not 3 chapters, it's one single conversation where they evolve from being strangers into a long-time married couple, which I thought was interesting. I was so confused like halfway through. I was like, wait a minute, I thought, didn't they just meet each other? It took me a while to get used to it. But the second time I saw it, understanding what it was, I really liked it. Yeah, that was a really interesting movie. Oh, the experimental one. Jonas Mekas. Okay. I have not, as far as I'm aware, I haven't seen any of his work. I've seen a few movies from that era. Like, I've seen some Andy Warhol stuff. I've seen some Paul Morrissey stuff. If I'm correct, like, I believe I remember reading that Mekas was involved in the Warhol scene in the 60s. But I don't think I've seen any of his work. Since I am Greek, what is your favorite Greek director? I can tell you the most acclaimed ones, so you can tell me if you know any. You probably should tell me the most acclaimed ones. If I'm remembering correctly, I believe Yorgos Lanthimos is Greek. He is one of my favorites. I love Lanthimos' work. Kiarostami is one of my top 3 directors. Close Up is also one of his best. Glad you liked it. Talking about certified copy? Yeah. Close Up. That's one I actually own on Blu-ray that I still haven't watched. I have some movies in my collection that I've owned for years and have never bothered to watch. That's one I'm going to have to put in soon. Yeah, I was one of those people that just like, I'd buy movies, I'd buy books, and now I have all this shelves of stuff that I haven't seen or read. So I guess it's good that I'm living more frugally. Is that the right term? I always get confused with my vocabulary. I lose confidence. I'm gonna go with frugally. I'm having to live much more sparingly. Damn it, none of it sounds right. But you know what I'm trying to say. I can't spend money on stuff anymore. So yeah, I'm getting a chance to catch up with the stuff I already own. Oh, and I know Kiarostami, he's got some other stuff. Last I checked, that was streaming on Netflix. The one he shot in Japan. Like Someone in Love. Yeah, I believe that one's on Netflix. That's another one. That's another one I'll have to check out. Close Up is really for people that love movies. Everyone that loves film will find it awesome. Is that a challenge, sir? Because if it is, I guarantee you that I will like it because I love movies. I will give it a look, though. Close Up. Yeah. It's on my shelf out there. I just need to pop it in. I'm guessing that I got Yorgos Lanthimos right as a Greek director. I'm almost like 90% certain that he's Greek. And I think he may be the only Greek director I know. I know... Oh, who's the... No. I was going to say the director of Taxidermia, but he's Hungarian. Georgi Pilfoy, I think it is. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure he's Hungarian. Taxidermia is a great movie. That's one worth tracking down for anybody that loves strange visionary works. I've talked about it before, but I love Taxidermia. Oh, yes, he is Greek. Cool. Other acclaimed directors are the guy who did The Last House on the Left remake, which I have not seen, and another guy who did True Crimes with Jim Carrey and Charlotte Gainsbourg, which I have not seen. That sounds interesting. Jim Carrey and Charlotte Gainsbourg. Huh. Yeah, I've seen the original Last House on the Left, but I haven't seen the remake. The original's kind of hasn't aged well. It's intense. There are still some really intense scenes, but yeah, Wes Craven, that was his first movie. He definitely evolved into a more confident filmmaker as time went on. I think Hills Have Eyes is much better. There's a few interesting parts in Last House on the Left, but the tone is just so inconsistent. He tries to fit in these bumbling Southern police officers that are like slapstick comic relief. It doesn't all fit together. I didn't think the original Last House on the Left was too good. Haven't seen the remake. Maybe a weird question, but how has your vision of cinema evolved since you got into movies? Well, I know it's changed a lot. The director who did Chevalier, and the director of Xenia. I'm not sure what those are. But yeah, I guess I'll go back to the other question. How has my vision of cinema evolved? I know originally when I first started really getting into movies, it was all about the director. And I really bought into the auteur theory that the director is the sole author of the film and everyone else is irrelevant. And I would look at a movie and I would get really intimidated because I'd see all of these things. I'd see cinematography, I'd see production design, costume design, special effects, editing, camera work, lighting, acting, writing, directing, sound design. I'd see everything and I'd think, one person did that. How? I can't even wrap my brain around it. Like, how do you coordinate all of this stuff and take control over all of these things? Because I've always been just sort of, I've never really lived in an area with an active film community. I live in a small town in Oregon, so I never really knew people that were like somebody who could do sound, somebody who could do editing, somebody who could do cinematography. It was kind of like, my idea was and also because I was so into the auteur theory, my idea of it was I have to do everything myself. And I found that idea overwhelming. And it wasn't until I went to film school when I was 21, a couple years ago. Well, actually, more than a couple years ago now. Hate to think about that, how much time has gone by. But it wasn't until I went to film school that I actually started to learn things are broken up, into departments and different roles on the crew and on the cast and everything, that film is actually much more of a collaborative effort. That you've got the director, which is really the person who is controlling everything and dictating everything, deciding which decisions are made, what everything, how it's going to come together. But that there are different people that are experts in their field that are going to contribute to that. The director might have an idea for what the movie is going to look like, but it's the cinematographer's job to really achieve that, so that the director can focus on other things. And I still subscribe to ideas behind the auteur theory that a film is the vision of a director, but now I realize that director has a lot of help. They have a lot of really brilliant, genius people in all of these different artistic fields that are all contributing to this vision and helping to add more to it, bring more to it, bring more out of it. And that is less overwhelming. The idea that, like, okay, I can write a script, but I don't have to write in, what everyone is wearing and what the lighting is going to be like in every scene and how the editing is going to go. I can just sort of write, this is what the story is, and then I'll get together with other people and we'll all collaborate into making it something more than just what is on the page. It's easier to wrap my brain around filmmaking in that way. I used to think the director was under a tremendous amount of pressure to do all of this, and now I realize there are a lot more creative voices and creative forces at work on a film. And it's evolved in other ways, too. Are you looking forward to seeing Lars von Trier's next film, The House That Jack Built, starring Matt Dillon, Uma Thurman, Riley Cuff? Not sure. And Bruno Ganz, who starred as Hitler in Downfall. Of course I am excited for that. I love Lars von Trier. I was a big fan of his last like 3 movies in a row. Antichrist I thought was brilliant. Melancholia I thought was devastating, and Nymphomaniac I thought was his magnum opus. It was amazing. And yeah, of course, House That Jack Built, I'm very excited for. He's just been this towering filmmaking force over these last few movies, just getting more and more daring and fearless and brilliant. I'm a huge fan of his work, so yeah, I really look forward to seeing how The House That Jack Built, how that turns out. Interesting cast so far. Matt Dillon, yeah, Bruno Ganz, Uma Thurman I didn't know was in it. Yeah, the cast is constantly adding more people now. It's movie's starting to come together. I'm excited. House That Jack Built is a return to horror after Antichrist. Yes, that's what I've heard. It's about a serial killer, and it's going to cover like decades in the life of this serial killer. And I've heard it's going to be intense, which I guess is no surprise since we're talking about Lars von Trier. But I remember reading an interview, because von Trier just recently started doing interviews again, and he was saying that this script has a lot of people really nervous, and he said it's going to be a really extreme movie, which I don't know exactly what that means. And yes, somebody just posted, he said countless actors said they would kill to work with him, but refuse to work on this movie because it's very violent and controversial. Yeah, that's what I read as well. He said he sent the script out to a lot of people, a lot of actors, who all said basically that. I would kill to work with you on anything but this script. Which, after Antichrist and Nymphomaniac, you gotta wonder, what could be in this thing that has people running scared? That's an interesting thought. I'll be curious to see what the movie ends up being. Because I don't know, God. Even stuff in... Because it sounds to me like House That Jack Built is going to be very violent and gruesome. And Nymphomaniac was mostly breaking sexual taboos, although there were some viscerally assaulting sequences, like the abortion sequence in Nymphomaniac, for instance, which I don't often get nauseated by things in movies. I don't always like violence, but I don't get physically nauseated by things I see on screen. That sequence in Nymphomaniac was one that actually made me physically nauseated. It was a lot to take. It's really brutal. And I wonder, if House That Jack Built, if it's just going to be like that for 5 or 6 hours, or however long he ends up making this one. It seems like he just gets more and more ambitious with each movie. So I'm a little bit frightened, but I'm also very, very interested to see what that movie ends up being. How he's building his ambition, How is this movie gonna top Nymphomaniac? I don't know how you could do it, but if anybody could, it'd be Lars von Trier. And I'm also getting a little worried for him too, because I don't know too much about his personal life, but that guy's dealing with some stuff, which I guess is obvious from his work. If you look at his movies, it's very autobiographical. His struggles with depression and anxiety. He's obviously somebody that's working through a lot of difficult emotional problems, which I can relate to. I'm somebody that I don't think I suffer from as extreme depression and anxiety, but it's something I've experienced too, so I can relate. And I know a few years ago he said that he got sober because pretty much every film he's made, he said like he couldn't start writing a script until like he'd drunk a whole bottle of vodka or something like that, and it was killing him, and he couldn't really deal with it anymore. And he got sober, and then he started working on this movie, and he said it was too difficult for him to write, and so he started drinking again, working on this movie. And now that production is really getting going on this movie, he's saying he doesn't know if he'll be able to make another movie after this, just because, again, he's killing himself through the drinking, which for him is the only way he can really conduct a lot of creativity, is just by destroying himself, which is really sad. I feel really bad for the guy that he does that to himself. But for him, that seems to be the only way he can really work and get the ideas flowing. I'm sure there's another way, but that takes a lot of therapy and a lot of soul searching. But I hope when the movie comes out that he can get well. If that means never making another movie, I mean, I think a person is more important than a movie. Or if he can find a way to work and be creative, without drugs or alcohol, then great. But yeah, I worry about the guy based on what I've heard recently. So yeah, I hope he does okay. Seems like a lot of directors are finding it difficult to work now. Just the other day, I saw an interview with David Lynch, who said that he's never going to make another movie, that the industry has just changed so much that there is no place for an auteur like him anymore. He can't get movies made. So he's basically stated, just flatly stated, Inland Empire was my last movie. I'm never going to make another one. Which was so sad to hear. But he apparently is more than open to working in the television format, because obviously you got Twin Peaks coming up soon, and it sounds like he... I think, at least, that he's going to continue doing television series and stuff like this. So he's still working, still creating, which is nice, but we're never going to see another Lynch movie, it sounds like, which is sad. And we'll see how the new Twin Peaks turns out, too. They're being very secretive, but hopefully it's good. Colin Farrell rejected The House That Jack Built in order to act in The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which he has said it made him feel nausea because it has several brutal scenes. Is that Killing of a Sacred Deer or House That Jack Built? Lars had the nursery rhyme The House That Jack Built in one of his first films, which is about a detective looking for a serial killer. Yeah, that's, what's that movie called? I know I've seen it. The Element of Crime. Yeah. It's so interesting seeing how Von Trier's style has evolved. I don't think anybody's really gone through as many extreme stylistic shifts as he has. He started out doing stuff like Europa and Element of Crime, these really stylized, experimental, art house films. And then just all of a sudden, seemingly out of nowhere, he totally shifts into something that is like the polar opposite of that. He does Breaking the Waves, which is, one of the first movies of the Dogma 95 movement, which is all extreme naturalism. And he does that for a little while. And now recently, I think after Dogville and Manderley, which were much more stylized and conceptual, now he's kind of hit upon a style that is like a mix of the two. They're extremely stylized, and they have very conceptual elements and sequences to them, and that's combined with the extreme naturalism. So you'll have scenes, that's all handheld, that's messy and naturalistic and seeming and shot almost like a documentary, sort of on the fly. And then you've got other sequences that are very composed, very artful, very carefully conducted. It's interesting how he's evolved like that. I love his work, though. I loved the ending in Nymphomaniac. I laughed so hard. I need to go back and finish Antichrist. Yeah, that's a tough one, but I think it's a brilliant film, if you can handle it. Which I don't blame you if you can't. Yeah, nothing wrong with, if a movie's too brutal for you, then you as the viewer have the choice over what you watch. I think the film you described was The Element of... Oh, so somebody already, mentioned Element of Crime. Thank you. I'm just now catching up, thinking I'm the brilliant film guy. The abortion scene put me on edge as well in Nymphomaniac. It's a tough scene. It is a really tough scene. Oh, talking about Killing of Sacred Deer. Okay. So it made him feel nausea because it has several brutal scenes. Okay, which is not surprising. Yorgos Lanthimos is another very confrontational filmmaker, not afraid to push some buttons. Sad to hear about Lynch, yeah. I hope his Twin Peaks puts him on track and is good. Yeah, I hope it is. I was surprised to find out that it was all shot on film, which film is really making a comeback. That's really cool to see. You know, I was kind of despairing a little bit earlier, saying, yeah, filmmaking, I say it's dying, and a lot of other people say it's dying. I don't think filmmaking is dying. I just think it's in a process of evolution. Filmmaking is transforming from what it once was into something very different now. You know, obviously with streaming and VOD and people watching movies for the most part in the comfort of their own homes, it's forcing the industry through a lot of major shifts and changes. And it's a little bit scary, you know, as somebody who loves the romance and I guess the prestige that comes with making like a big movie and putting it in theaters and getting a lot of people to see it, you know, in like a cathedral almost, a place of worship where it's built specifically for that one movie and you've got a giant screen and you watch it and you're engulfed by it. I love that. And if I ever got the opportunity to make movies, I would want people to see them in a theater, to pay worship to me because I'm a narcissist. But it doesn't look like that form of filmmaking and film, I guess you could say consumption, film experience, is going away. It's in its last few days, I think, and it's becoming something else, which I guess that's the way the world works, you know? Things move in eras. One era ends, another begins. I think that era is ending and a new era is beginning. So you've just got to find a way to thrive and be creatively fulfilled in this new era. I hope, at least for my first couple movies, they can get played in a theater. But that being said, with the industry shifting, it is interesting that film is coming back, that a lot of directors are committing, to making stuff on film. And yes, Twin Peaks, the new Twin Peaks, was shot on film, 35mm film, which was very surprising because Lynch was one of those guys when digital really started coming into vogue. He shot Inland Empire on a digital format and was like, this is great. Digital's the future. Digital is so much better than film. It's so much easier. It's so much more... it allows for so much more creativity because it's so much more versatile than film. And after hearing all of that, you would think, okay, so Lynch is never going back to film, to celluloid, to the clunky analog format. But then, when Twin Peaks was getting ready to shoot, he was saying, I was reading some interviews, he was saying, I've really fallen back in love with film. We're shooting the new Twin Peaks on 35mm. It's like, wow, that's really cool. A lot of directors seem to be going that way. Like Michael Mann, who was one of the big early innovators of digital filmmaking, like with stuff like Collateral and Miami Vice and Public Enemies. He really pushed the format and really showed like you can make a really visual, incredible looking movie on digital if you know how to use it. Collateral was a big one. That was one of the first like major movies shot on digital that made people go, wow, that looks incredible, because it's all shot at night. And film doesn't work very well at night, but digital works very well at night. And Michael Mann was one of the people that showed everyone, the potential of digital and how it can work really, really well with certain projects. And after, doing his last several movies on digital, he just recently announced that his new one, which I think is a biopic on the guy that created the Ferrari. Don't know how good that one's going to be, but he just recently announced that it's going to be shot on film. So, hey, you never know. You never know what the future holds. I never would have guessed like David Lynch would go back to film. I never would have guessed Michael Mann would go back to film, but it's happening. which is cool. It means it's going to stick around for a little bit longer. I would love to get the opportunity to work on 35 millimeter. I've worked on film before. I've shot stuff on 8 millimeter and I've shot stuff on 16 millimeter, and I love it. Just the sound of the film whirring through the gate, that sound, there's something so satisfying about it. We're making a real movie, and just handling it physically with your hands, switching out the film in the canisters. Yeah, I love it. Have you seen 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days by Christian Mungiu? Again with the names, I apologize. It's all my fault. Mungiu. I don't know. It won the Palme d'Or in 2007, beating Zodiac and No Country for Old Men. I did see that one a long time ago. I remember it was very difficult. It's a very quiet, very sparse kind of drama, and I there are certain scenes in it that stick out in my mind. That whole sequence, because it's about I don't know what it's a Romanian film, and I believe it takes place like in the 70s or the 80s, when abortion was illegal in Romania, and it's about these two young women that seek an illegal abortion for one of them, and the difficulties they experience in trying to do that. And I remember especially the scene in the hotel room when they meet with the guy who's going to do it, and the way that all plays out. I remember being very disquieted by that whole sequence. And I remember the film, being very, very quietly intense. Like, it really draws you in. It doesn't have like a lot of big emotion. It kind of moves at a very deliberate pace, but I remember being very drawn in by it and very struck, by that quiet intensity in the storytelling. But it's been a long time since I've seen it, so if I was going to comment on it more in depth, I think I would need to watch it again, refresh my memory. But yeah, there are bits in that one that really stick out in my mind, even after all these years. Oh, and I was going to say something else. Oh yeah, there was another movie that I saw recently. I saw Ang Lee's new movie, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. Since we're talking about film and digital and all that, what about the films of Amir Kusturica? He won 2 Palme d'Ors. That's so funny that you mentioned that. I just found out about him fairly recently. I was reading a book of interviews with David Lynch, and he and the interviewer were talking about that director. I'd never heard of him before, and I looked him up and read a little bit about his movies. I was like, I'm gonna have to watch some stuff by this guy. I haven't been able to track down any of his work yet, but he's one recently that just got put on my radar, and I'm trying to find some of his work, like Arizona Dream with Johnny Depp and Underground, which I've heard a lot about. I want to watch Underground. That was the one in particular that Cronenberg was talking about. He was saying he really liked Underground. What did Lynch say about him? I'm interested. I meant David Cronenberg. Did I say David Lynch? I'm sorry. I meant David Cronenberg. I'm sorry if I said Lynch. It was David Cronenberg. I don't remember exactly what he said about him. He was just saying that Underground was Underground was a movie that really impressed him. It was one he saw a couple times, I think. So I was like, interesting. I'll have to look into that. So it's funny that you bring him up. What was I talking about, though? Ang Lee's new one, yeah. To get back to the discussion about film versus digital, you didn't know about Costa Rica, surprise. Are you being sarcastic or genuine? Underground is really great. Yeah, I can't now I'm embarrassed that I didn't know about this guy. I'd never heard of him. I don't know how now, since apparently I'm one of the last ones to find out about this. But yeah, I'm looking into his work now. Guess it goes to show, you think you know everything. Turns out you know very little. That's okay. It's okay to be humbled. Ang Lee's new one. This was one I remember hearing about it because it was shot in this new format. It was shot in 3D, in 4K on digital, and shot at 120 frames a second. That's another discussion to have. Talk about film versus digital. That's kind of over. It looks like film's going to stick around for a little while, as I was saying, since there are still directors that really love working on the format. I still think sooner or later film is going to go away and digital will become the standard. And so I guess the next discussion, genuine surprise, okay. Well, I'm sorry. I don't know how, but yeah, I'd never heard of Emir Kusturica before. I'm going to have to see one of his movies now. I got to find Underground. But anyway, yeah, that seems to be like the new discussion, is digital's here to stay. It seems 3D, at least for movies of a certain scale, is here to stay. Is everyone for a digital revolution in here? As I said, I love the analog formats, and I love film. I hope it sticks around. I would want to work on film. But honestly, if I'm being realistic, I think its days are numbered. Because for me, and this is also, I think, something that could be said about the higher frame rates too, which I've never seen a movie in a higher frame rate. I know like Peter Jackson shot the Hobbit movies on a higher frame rate, I think at like 48 frames a second. And Ang Lee shot Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk at 120 frames. Ang Lee is shooting his next one, which I think is a Muhammad Ali biopic. He's shooting that at like 68 frames. James Cameron is shooting the new Avatar movies in a higher frame rate. And I don't know much about it. I haven't really done too much reading on this technology. From what I understand, it makes 3D a lot better. And you get like glasses with a shutter in them that it's synced up with the frame rate of the movie. And so I guess with the higher frame rates and the higher shutters, like it makes the 3D effect much more convincing, gives the image a lot more depth and creates the illusion much more effectively. And I had heard some stories when Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, Ang Lee's new one, when it first started like playing at a few festivals, there were people that were saying like the 3D effect with the higher frame rate was incredible. Like visually one of the most stunning things they had ever seen. They were saying in particular, like with the battle scenes in Iraq or Afghanistan, I forget which, I apologize. But basically the battle scenes, it felt like you were actually there. Like you were actually physically there in that environment. And I remember reading that and thinking, like, wow, this sounds like something to check out. Unfortunately, though, not many theaters are equipped to do the higher frame rate projections. And where I live, yeah, we really don't have anything like that. So even though Billy Lynn played here, we didn't really have the higher frame rates or anything. So I didn't really go see it, and it turned out the reviews were kind of negative anyway. The movie, I guess, aside from the new technology, wasn't really that good. And I just recently got a hold of a DVD from the library and gave it a watch. And yeah, the movie's not very good, which I'm really surprised to say, because I think Ang Lee is incredible. He's done so many great movies. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, obviously. Brokeback Mountain's a great movie. The Wedding Banquet, Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, some of his earlier stuff. Ice Storm is a great movie. Life of Pi, I thought was brilliant. Life of Pi, if you want to talk about technology, Life of Pi was the movie that convinced me 3D actually had artistic merit. Like, for years, I was so stubborn on 3D. I was saying, like, it's a gimmick. It adds nothing to the film-going experience. I'd seen a few things in 3D, I think, previously. And it was just like, it's not necessary. I hadn't seen Avatar in 3D, and a lot of people say that was the one that convinced them on 3D. I never saw Avatar in 3D. So it took me a lot longer. When I saw Life of Pi, the way Ang Lee used 3D in that movie, he shot it in 3D, he, staged it and composed the images specifically for the depth of 3D. It was amazing. It was incredible. One of the most incredible visual experiences I've ever had in a theater. It was just fantastic. What about Hulk? Well, I don't think Hulk is as bad as people say, but I do think it's one of his weaker movies. He's done a lot of underrated stuff too, like Taking Woodstock from like 2009. I thought that was a great movie, and I've only ever read like really lukewarm things about it at best. I thought it was great. I loved Taking Woodstock. And yeah, Life of Pi, seeing that, it would, even just watching it in the theater, I've seen it subsequently at home, and it's still a great movie just because of the quality of the story and the directing and the acting. Still a really good movie, even without the 3D, but with the 3D, even watching it in the theater, I was like, this would not be the same in 2D. The 3D is adding so much to the experience, and that was the one that really turned me around and made me realize, okay, if the director's got the story and has got the vision, then 3D definitely has artistic merit. It can really add something to the experience. I'm sort of at the same place with the higher frame rates. I have yet to see anything in a higher frame rate, but I guess because of the experience with 3D, I remain open to the idea that it could add something. But as of yet, I've never seen a movie, in 24 frames and thought like, this could use an extra 98 frames per second. Or 96 frames, yeah. Yeah, but I remain open to the idea that if a director really has a vision and really knows the potential of this new technology, I could see a movie in a theater, with a higher frame rate and be totally turned around on it and think like, okay, yeah, this is the future. But for me, I don't know if higher frame rates will really become the standard. And I don't know if... Yeah, I don't know about 3D either. Obviously, 3D is going to stick around for a little while because it allows studios to charge more for a movie ticket. And some directors are doing legitimately interesting things with 3D. But for me, I think that the thing that really determines the direction the industry is going to go and what will become the new filmmaking standards, it's all about the cost and how consumer friendly it is. I think that's why digital really replaced film, because it was easier, it was cheaper, and it was faster. And at least right now, something like 3D, I don't think will really become a solid standard because it's more difficult, and it's more expensive, and it's slower. Higher frame rates right now are in the same place, and obviously they're a new technology. It'll become cheaper and easier, but it all depends, I think, really, if you're talking about higher frame rates or 3D. If it becomes cheaper and easier and faster than 2D 24 frames, then it'll become the standard. But if it's more expensive, if it's more difficult, it'll never really replace just the standard digital format, because that's the easiest. So I think it's all dependent on that. But I guess for the higher scale films, the things that they're trying with the new technology, it's interesting to see and to speculate. Unfortunately, I never saw, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. I didn't see in 3D. I didn't see in the higher frame rates. I just watched on DVD at home. And just as a film, I was really disappointed by it. It had kind of an obvious message to it. It was a little, too melodramatic, too on the nose. It's about, obviously, war and soldiers dealing with the trauma of war and how the public perception of war and the life of a soldier, how there's an idea of it and a presentation of it in the media that is very different from the reality. Potential there to tell a really interesting story, but this one just kind of was a little too obvious with it, a little too on the nose, a little too melodramatic. I didn't really think there was a lot of subtlety or power or or punch to the way the story was told. And if the impact of the movie is entirely dependent on the technology, to me that doesn't mean that it's really a strong movie. For me, like, a great movie is one you can watch just about anywhere, anytime, any way, and it's still a great movie. You know, if you watch it on an airplane on your iPhone, not the ideal settings, obviously, but it should still be a really good movie. The story should still involve you, and you should still get emotionally invested in it. To me, that never changes. But if you take away all the advantages a movie can have, and it doesn't really work, to me that says something about just its quality as a movie. And Billy Lynn, you know, it's not awful, but it just, from somebody like Ang Lee, who normally his wisdom and his sensitivity and his compassion and humanity normally makes his movies so emotionally potent, I didn't really sense that so much here. And I don't know why that was. Maybe just the quality of the script, or if maybe the technology had something to do with that. You know, that he was so focused on trying to work with these new potentials and limitations with the higher frame rate and the 3D. Because I was reading about it. Since they were shooting in 120 frames a second, that adds a lot of difficulties to the movie. You can't shoot a movie in 3D with a much higher frame rate the same way you would shoot a movie in 2D with the standard frame rate. You need certain amounts of light, you know, on 24 frame 2D. You can almost shoot with no light, as we've seen, you know, with the latest digital cameras. But with 3D, you need a lot more light. And especially with higher frame rates, you need huge amounts of light just to get a proper exposure on that, because the shutter's moving so quick, the frame rate is moving so quick that you need to make sure enough light is getting through the lens onto the sensor to get a proper exposure. So it makes it a lot trickier to shoot, a lot more time consuming. And also the sharpness and the clarity of the image was so much higher than, you know, a standard format. They couldn't do normal things that you do on another movie. They couldn't use makeup on the actors because you'd be able to tell they were wearing makeup. So they had to figure out a way of getting the actor's camera ready without using the usual forms of makeup, or using no makeup whatsoever and doing it all with the lighting. So that's tricky. That's time consuming. You have to figure out a way around that stuff. And I wonder if just maybe his focus was on so many other things that the quality of the movie itself suffered a little bit because of that. I'm not sure what it was, but I thought the movie was weak. I thought it could have been a lot better. But it's interesting to think about the technology and to read about it, and yeah, the challenges that come with new filmmaking technology. And I remain open to the idea that, yeah, if somebody can figure out, how to really realize the potential of higher frame rates in 3D, we could be seeing something really stunning in the future. Who knows, maybe Avatar 2 will really do something incredible with it. James Cameron, obviously, I have my problems with James Cameron as a storyteller, but his innovations with new technology are pretty remarkable. He's somebody that, is capable with just a single film of really pushing the industry forward into the future. And that is one thing I respect about him. So we'll see. It remains to be seen. Just take a look at the chat here, see what I missed. I would love to work on film. I think they both have a purpose. Just depends on your stylistic choice. To me, film looks more dreamlike, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think it does. The grain, it adds a certain level of texture to it. To me, really high quality digital, it's too sharp. It's too clear. You can see just things I feel like you're not meant to see, you know? You can see all the pores on the actors' faces. I don't know. I recoil a little bit from the screen, you know, if I see a 4K digital close-up. It's a little too much. I want a level of stylization, you know, add some grain on there, add some texture to lessen the effect, I guess. Maybe that's just me. But I feel like film allows you to get away with a lot more, whereas digital, it's like there's nowhere to hide. And yeah, it's a format, and if you have a story that is suited to that format, then yeah, obviously digital is a tool just as much as film, and it has its strengths and it has its weaknesses. But yeah, for me, there's something about film that I just love. Yeah, I love the grain. I love the surprises you get with it. You can't totally control what film is going to do, so you might be surprised by the way the light refracts through the lens, the way the certain frames get exposed. The way I say it is like digital is it's a precise tool. You can control everything about digital. Film, you can't totally control. There's going to be a level of anarchy there. There's going to be a level of unpredictability there, and I find that very exciting. And film is more like a collaborator, and that's what I like about it. More directors use it for that effect, like Zach. Oh, okay, yeah, like Gabriel Abrantes, Lev Kalman. Oh, I think more directors use it for that effect, for the dreamlike effect. Okay. And I'm not familiar with those directors. My limitations, as far as, film knowledge goes, are becoming really apparent here. So many directors that I don't recognize. What films are you looking forward to the most from this year's Cannes? I'm looking forward to Happy End by Haneke and Sacred Deer by Lanthimos. Definitely Lanthimos. The new Todd Haynes film I'm really excited for, which is called Wonderland? I don't remember exactly, but I love Todd Haynes. Really excited for his new one. He's another one that doesn't work nearly often enough as far as I'm concerned. I love his movies. I'm Not There, the one he did about Bob Dylan, that's one of my favorite movies of all time. If you haven't seen I'm Not There, it's great. Absolutely see it. Haneke, great director, but man, he's one of those filmmakers that just he's so bleak and so brutal, I can't always handle it. I can't always emotionally, I can't always handle his movies. Like Benny's Video was one I just barely made it through. Funny Games, yeah, just barely able to make it through that movie. Amor, his most recent one, I couldn't even finish. I got maybe halfway through, and just the way it was confronting death and aging and mortality and sickness, I couldn't take it. I had to stop that one. So Haneke, yeah, I admire his talent. He's obviously a great filmmaker, because obviously he wouldn't affect me in this way if he wasn't, great at what he did. But often I find it to just be way too much for me. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't know much about Happy End. I could end up really liking it if it's a little less emotionally devastating than Amor. But I don't know. We'll see. I'll have to look into it. Another one I'm excited for from this year's Cannes is Sofia Coppola's new one, The Beguiled. That looks interesting. And it's been a little while. Well, I guess not that long. It's only been a couple years since Sofia Coppola's last one. But I think she's a great director. So I'm excited to see how The Beguiled turns out. How about virtual reality? It can become a mash of film, gaming experience. I don't know. I think virtual reality is better suited to the gaming format. I think virtual reality, there's a lot more potential to use it as an immersive tool for gaming. For film, I'm not so sure. Because that, to me, it's interactive. It brings it to the level of a game, which sounds like sounds like a pejorative. It brings film down to the level of a video game. I don't mean it that way. I respect, the art of video games, and I think gaming as an art form, it has its own particular strengths and weaknesses, and I think virtual reality is better suited to that form, where it's more interactive and it gives the viewer or the player more control. Like they can look wherever they want. To me, an essential part of the filmmaking art is that there's a director there determining where you're going to look. They're pointing the camera in this direction, they're moving it over in that direction, they're cutting over to this angle. I think that control needs to be there in order for it to really be a film. Maybe I'm just stuck in the past here and I can't see the future. I've never really seen a virtual reality movie, so maybe I'm not qualified to talk about this, but I really do believe that's an essential part of film craft and the art of film, is that a director is determining, you're going to look here now you're going to look there, and it's somebody telling the story through those techniques. Whereas in virtual reality, you can look anywhere you want, and you might miss the story. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I don't really, as far as virtual reality films go right now, I don't really look at it as anything more than an interesting experiment. It could become, something much more. But right now I think it's just interesting, from an experimental point of view. Let's see what we can do with this. Let's see, what potential is here. I'm not sure, though. I'm not totally convinced on virtual reality. But I think it's perfectly suited to a video game. More immersive, you can totally just transport yourself, take yourself into another world, explore it, get more control over it. I think it'd be great for gaming. But, personally, I don't think it's very well suited for filmmaking. I think people want realism too much. Style is way better to me. I would actually agree with that. I like stylization more than I like naturalism. If you see a really naturalistic movie, that can be really exciting. But I don't feel like a lot of directors are really good at giving a feeling like they're just capturing real life. I think, filmmaking is storytelling. Drama is stylization. You can play with it. You can dictate the rules. You can make decisions. You can take chances. You can bend reality to your will. I think it's much more fun and much more interesting to play around with that. What if this happened? What if that happened? How can we present this story that somebody experiencing it in real life wouldn't have? That's also a way of exploring themes, presenting a different kind of point of view, where if you're in the ground level, you're seeing it one way, but if you step back a little bit, look at the big picture, it can give you a different kind of perspective. To me, I like stylization more. How are you telling the story? That's more interesting to me than the story itself. How is that story being told? That's what really fascinates me. Can't wait for You Were Never Really Here. I think that's the name of it. That's, I have that written down. That's the new Lynn Ramsey movie, isn't it? With Joaquin Phoenix. I remember someone mentioning that. Film as a game in VR. Oh, yeah, Lynn Ramsey is a brilliant director. Yes. Maybe even different plots, etc. Yeah, I don't know. To me, that just seems like a game. Because they have games that are like interactive films. Like, what was that game that just got kickstarted recently? Contradiction. And there have been other games like that before, but I just recently saw somebody play that on YouTube. Contradiction is, it's like a mystery story that you interact with. You've got to talk to people, and it's all done with real actors, shot with real cameras and everything. It's real people, acting scenes out, and you decide what they say. You have to spot contradictions and say, wait, you said this a minute ago, now you're saying this, and you have to solve the mystery that way. It's basically an interactive film. And to me, it's not really a movie at that point. It's a game. And so I think if you're talking about, a film that you interact with, to me, I would define that as a game. If there's an interactive element, just to me personally, I would define that as a game. Movies, maybe I'm being just too rigid here. Maybe my vision is too limited, but I just think films inherently should not be interactive. They should present a point of view, a specific point of view. And that's me. That's the way I look at it. And there's what do they call those? Walking simulators? That's kind of a pejorative term. But there's, interesting stuff in that way too, where kind of everything's predetermined and you're just controlling the character and walking through an environment and experiencing a story in a certain way. I think my brother just turned the fan on in the bathroom. I don't know if you can hear that. We'll just ignore it. But yeah, you're kind of experiencing a linear story that's been plotted out and mapped for you, but you're interacting, you're discovering it. And there's some really interesting stuff being done in that format too. A lot of really interesting games. But again, I would define them as games. Even though the interaction is limited and it's kind of predetermined, everything that you're going to do, I would still define that as a game. Thoughts on PTA's new film with Daniel Day-Lewis? I don't really know anything about it. It sounds like it's being kept pretty secretive, but new Paul Thomas Anderson and Daniel Day-Lewis, that sounds like a good thing to me. I'm excited for it. Personally, I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I was not a fan of Inherent Vice, so I'll be interested to see what Anderson does with this new one. It seems like he's moving in a different kind of direction with the way he's making movies. It seems like he's kind of pulling away from story a little bit, because that was the thing that really struck me about Magnolia and Boogie Nights, is that they've got these huge sprawling stories that they're telling, and you're moving through it with such energy. He seems to be pulling away from that style a little bit and being much more about interactions between people. Like The Master it was a great movie, but it was not so much about, sweeping through this huge epic story with all of these characters that are given a pretty much equal amount of focus. It was really about two characters. There are other characters around that, but really the focus of that movie is the Joaquin Phoenix and Philip Seymour Hoffman characters and their interactions. And the meat of that movie is the scenes when they're just seated at a table, looking eye to eye and interacting. Those are the really charged moments in that movie. And Inherent Vice, it seemed to be kind of moving more in that direction. It's mostly about people just sitting and talking. And I guess maybe you can certainly enjoy that, but I don't know. I prefer, personally, I like much more the Paul Thomas Anderson style when he's moving through the story energetically, and the camera's constantly mobile, and we feel like we're just being swept through this thing. Inherent Vice for me was just, it was too static. I don't know. I think people sitting and talking is better suited for theater. I think theater is a great artistic format for interaction, dialogue. Film, I think, should be more visual. But that's me. So I don't know. We'll see what the new PTA one, ends up being like. I guess, obviously, Paul Thomas Anderson is in control of his own artistic arc, but I personally would hope that it's something more in the vein of like Boogie Nights. That's the mode of Paul Thomas Anderson that I really like. But who knows, maybe he doesn't really find satisfaction in that kind of storytelling anymore. Maybe he wants to explore something else. So we'll see. But it's always interesting to see his work. I think he's a brilliant artist. So yeah, even though I didn't like Inherent Vice so much, it was still interesting to see him experiment, try different things. There was a time when you couldn't break the fourth wall. I think it's similar with VR in that sense. Maybe. Hardcore Henry was pretty much a VR film, but it wasn't too good. It was pretty much Crank in first person. Seems kind of like that. I heard some people really loved Hardcore Henry, and I guess it's an interesting idea for a movie. Although it's, first-person movies have been done before. I thought Gaspar Noé did it pretty well in Enter the Void. That is, arguably, it's all in first person. Most of it takes place after death, but it is still pretty much in first person. And that was interesting. I thought Enter the Void was a great movie. But Hardcore Henry, ridiculous action movie. We've seen plenty of those. So I don't know. I wasn't too interested in seeing Hardcore Henry. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe I will at some point, but yeah, I wasn't too interested in it. But an interesting experiment. Let's try an action movie all in first person. Why not? Yeah, I don't know. Would that work in VR? Seems like it'd be kind of sickening with so much with all the stuff that's happening. Even I've just seen the trailers and all the shit that's constantly coming at you on screen. That'd be kind of nauseating in VR, I would think. Oh, PTA said his latest films are high on character and low on plot. Which, okay, yeah. If that's the direction he's going as an artist, then great. Just, yeah, I guess as a viewer, I would prefer, well, maybe not more on plot, but just more on energy, on subjectivity, you know? I love how in Magnolia, yeah, the camera is almost like a character moving through the scene with everybody, and Boogie Nights too. I love that about those movies. And yeah, like Scorsese, you know, you see that in Goodfellas and Casino. The camera's almost like a character in those movies, and I love that kind of storytelling. I would like to see more of that personally, but you know, I'm not the one deciding what movies Paul Thomas Anderson makes, so he should just do what is creatively satisfying to him. I absolutely loved Hardcore Henry. It was more ridiculous than other action movies. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how much I would like it, but yeah, maybe I'll see it someday, who knows. Yeah, it's an interesting question, the idea of VR and in the future of filmmaking. I don't know. At this point, I'm really not convinced. But if there are people that see potential in it and really try to do something interesting with it, then yeah, who knows? My throat is killing me. I think maybe it's about time to bring this stream to a close, too. Okay. Hardcore Henry made me pretty dizzy in the theater. Yeah, I can imagine. Well, yeah, I think... Oh, Radagon by Malik. He said he's moving away from those stream of consciousness films. Yeah, I read about that. Yeah, Radagon is the new Terrence Malick movie. It sounds like it's going to be a return to more narrative filmmaking, which will be interesting to see. I think I talked about that in a previous stream recently, too. But yeah, we'll have to see where that ends up. My favorite Terrence Malick movies have been ones that... Well, he's never been especially story-driven or plot-driven, at least, but to me, it's when he has a little bit of structure that he's working within that I think he's at his best. And his last couple have been interesting. They've had some great moments in them, but I don't know. They felt like they're just becoming too unfocused to me. That's me, though. I know, that some people have disagreed with me on these streams. I know I've gotten a few comments that say Knight of Cups, that some people think that's his best film. I personally thought it was his weakest, but yeah, he's always an interesting filmmaker, always doing interesting things, taking big chances, which I always respect that. But yeah, we'll see how Radagon turns out, if he's moving in a more narrative-driven direction. I guess personally I'm glad to hear that, because I think his films are stronger when they do that. And obviously, you know, he's never going to play by the rules exactly. He's probably going to break a lot of narrative plot rules and is not going to just deliver like a Robert Zemeckis movie. I don't imagine him ever doing that. It's probably still going to be very Malick, but with a little more form to it, a little more structure. So we'll see. He's a great filmmaker. So yeah, of course, I'm always excited to see a new film from him. But yeah, so I think with that, we'll bring this stream to a close. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining me for talking film. It's always fun to do these. Hopefully, I think I have the next 3 Saturdays off from work. So at least for the next few weeks, Saturday is going to be the streaming day. Sorry, these can't be more consistent, but yeah, I'll probably see you next Saturday, and the Saturday after that, and the Saturday after that, and we'll see where it goes from there. But yeah, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out some of the other videos. I do still have a Patreon. I was thinking about deleting that, but I actually ended up switching it so that it only pays out every time I post an Unmade Masterpieces. And if you pledge to that, then it'll charge for every time I post an Unmade Masterpieces. And since I don't want to rip people off and take a bunch of money from you, I'll make sure if I post more than one Unmade Masterpieces in a month, I don't charge for any additional ones. Although I don't think I'll be posting more than one a month. Work is going very slow just because of the job and everything. Don't have a lot of time for it anymore. Sorry about that. But yeah, I have fun doing the streams. Thank you all for joining me. And I guess I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.